of criminal association laws. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to look just very briefly at the Canadian experience. Laws that banned outlaw motorcycle gangs and clubs in Canada led to the institutions of the state in Canada, and especially in Quebec province, coming under attack. 7 bombs were found under police stations, 2 prison guards were murdered, an anti-biker journalist crusader was almost killed, 1 innocent bystander mistaken to be a prison guard was murdered. So I would argue there's a very good chance that association laws which target groups as a whole will increase the probability of more public violence. Indeed, public safety and crime both appear not to be controlled by such legislation in Canada. Since 1994, in Quebec, there have been no less than 85 murders and 92 attempted murders related to Quebec's biker wars, as well as 129 arson attacks and 82 bombings. Earlier this year, 156 bikers, mostly from the Hells Angels, were arrested, indicating that the Hells Angels, despite tough laws since 1997, are alive and well, and no one really seriously suggests that these arrests will put the Hells Angels out of business at all. Indeed, I can't find, and if somebody else has got it, I'd love to see it, one iota of evidence to suggest that the relevant Canadian laws, especially C-95, which was introduced, as I said, in 1997, and which is the participation in a criminal organisation legislation, much like the legislation in New South Wales and South Australia and planned in other states. I can't find one iota of evidence to suggest that it's diminished gang activity, reduced organised crime, or led to the demise of biker gangs. Instead, and predictably, gang activity has changed, becoming more displaced and more submerged, and less able, rather than more able, to be accessed by law enforcement. Anyone who believes, I would argue, that criminal individuals or groups involved in organised crime will not adapt to new and more draconian laws has simply not studied the history of organised crime. In any event, as Philip Bolton, SC, from Sydney, from New South Wales, perceptively noted in regard to the Australian association laws, if people are already killing and shooting each other, as they have unfortunately in Australia, then any new laws will hardly stop them meeting and, in his own words, having a beer together. Again, just coming down towards the end of what I want to say, and referring to Ian Barker, the veteran criminal defence lawyer who I mentioned in the beginning of my talk, he recently pointed out in the same speech that I quoted from that in his lifetime, and this to me is a very important point, in his lifetime as a barrister, he's seen in various pieces of legislation laws that might be attractive to politicians and indeed to voters, but laws that have severely eroded old principles such as the right to silence, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom from arbitrary arrest, the right of privacy, the right to see evidence against one, the right to confront one's accuser, the freedom of the judiciary, and detention without charge. In various pieces of legislation, all these laws have been eroded. Now we add on to that list laws that stop people from associating with each other. Where does it stop? Where does it stop? How many liberties do we have to forsake to preserve the illusion that we are safer in our homes or on the streets? Ladies and gentlemen, it's not as though we're without alternatives. Other countries, Denmark being one, have made good progress in curbing crime among biker groups by smart, intelligence-led policing without draconian laws, as well as now a body of evidence-based research and practice that outlines the effect of law enforcement practices and crime prevention methods to deal with gang-related violence, encouraging biker group mediations and meetings of the sort that Ferret has referred to is just one. And in this whole debate, let us not forget the enormous powers that police forces and other law enforcement bodies have already. Every state has considerable electronic monitoring powers. Some states have crime commissions which can force people to come in and talk, and it's a criminal offence if they don't. These are enormous powers to deal with organised crime, which we've got already. We hardly need our legal rights to be further eroded by laws that punish groups for crimes they might or might not commit in the future, in contrast to laws that target individuals for crimes they have committed in the past. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, even the devil deserves a trial. This legislation does not give the devil, let alone biker groups, a trial. This is not the way to proceed in Australia. Thank you very much.